So, how are you this morning? Yes? Good? Front row's awake. All right, great. So we're at a technology conference, and I figured I would not talk to you about technology for a little while. Does that sound right? This is the Earth. No. So what I actually want to talk to you a little bit about today is having empathy for users and put that in the context of a few things. One, as an open source community, is those of you that contribute to the project, those of you that use Cloud Foundry, understanding the enterprise developer, understanding the enterprise user. But the second thing is I actually want to leave you with some thoughts, right? I have 3 recommendations and 1 request. So I'm going to leave those to the end. We are increasingly, and the Cloud Foundry community has been talking about this for a very long time. We're increasingly in an environment of rapid change, rapid technological evolution. That's occurring not just in information technology, which is where we live, right? But in all forms of technology. And it's happening faster and faster as we've connected the globe, as communities on other sides of the planet find more efficient ways to interact with each other. Science is advancing, and this is a lot of change, right? And it's really the first time in human history where the amount of advancement has occurred, is happening at this pace, right? It's actually very hard to keep up. Now, I'm an engineer, I'm a software developer, at least I was. I'm not sure I would trust my own code today. But I love new and shiny things, right? Everybody here that likes new and shiny things, raise your hand. This is an exercise to make sure you're awake. Great. Cool. All right, so lots of new and shiny people here. And for many of us, it's because we're in the business of technology, right? We create new things. Many of you that contribute to the project, like some of the people that will give us demonstrations later today, we contribute to the project, and it's all about creating something new and interesting. But you saw this picture yesterday when Abby spoke, and it was in the context of whitewater rafting, but I have a slightly different analogy I sometimes use when I think about maybe the developer that's being told constantly, like, we have to ship this new business feature, we have to ship this new website or this new partner portal. Combined with all of the change to the languages, the frameworks, the platforms, it's like a tidal wave keeps crashing on them, and every time they get back up because they go, oh, I figured out this new JavaScript framework, and then all of a sudden a new tidal wave comes because we're all moving to the next thing. It can actually be a big burden. So everything we do needs to be about lifting them up, right? Helping them get above that wave so they can do the kayaking that we talk about, right? So they can navigate all of this change effectively. They can stay above it and not get crushed by this wave over and over again. Now, within the Cloud Foundry community, we have a similar need. We need to continue to navigate the waters of broad change in technology. We have a legacy, a heritage of developer productivity, of great developer experience, and that experience is something that we need to continue to move forward over time. And historically, we've done this, right? We keep integrating things, and more recently, there's been the Arini project and Quarks, and Cloud Native Build Packs is actually becoming a great success. We have this history of continuing to evolve the platform, and users have gotten to take advantage of that. But here's a statistic, because it's less about what's under the covers. We spend a lot of time talking about what's under the covers of the platform, right? So as much as it's really important to say, hey, we've packaged the platform in a new way to run on Kubernetes, or we're now integrating with Kubernetes, or Istio's now been integrated, we don't do that because we want to just integrate new technology. We do it because we're trying to make sure that that experience the developers need is available for them in the latest infrastructure, and that we're improving that experience. We're saying there are new possibilities now. Let's make it easy to consume. And that's kind of borne out if you look at the statistic. 66% of decision makers in IT talk about open source as giving them some potential opportunity, right? It's unlocking opportunity. Any of you remember back when open source was all about freedom from vendor lock-in, right? I mean, that was a big thing. Open source, it's free, I'm not going to be locked into any vendors. And there's truth to that. But that's not the reason why organizations want open source-based solutions. It's because it unlocks opportunity, because there's global shared research and development. There's ideas being swapped between communities. So we need to remember that. Now, our users enjoy the benefit of a lot of this, and they also enjoy the benefit of constant iteration. We did a user survey. I think we released it very recently. And one of the key stats here that I thought was most important is that 86% of the respondents, the developers, say, look, it's more efficient, right? It's much more efficient than the past. And development cycles are collapsing, right? We asked, hey, well, how long does it take you to go from a code commit to getting this thing running in production? Back in 2018, it was only 19%. Only 19%. 10 years ago, how many of you would ever think that you'd make a commit and it would be in production in less than a day, right? Raise your hand if you believe that 10 years ago. All right, good. That was the test. You passed. We're now at a point where we're able to do that. In fact, it's becoming a regular behavior in enterprises where that would have been unheard of years ago. Here are some lines with numbers. So we've been doing a global perception survey. This is actually, this isn't a user survey. This is something that is very, very well thought through in terms of the statistical validity of it. And we do this global perception study, and we've been doing it since February of 2016. And we ask a lot of different questions, but just we can summarize this in the set of questions we've asked over time. There's lots of them, but the two that I'm graphing here are you using a platform as a service, or are you using containers? Now, if you're using a platform as a service, you're probably using containers, right? Because it's under the covers, but it's really about what people understand that they're using. Now, over time, back when we started, it was 45% of respondents said they're using some type of platform as a service, right? And then we went through a dip. People, only 30% were using PaaS. And then it went up again to 47% again, and then it went dipped down again. Now we're back up to 47%. So I want to talk about those two dips, right? Those kind of look like Amazon Smile logos, I guess, but they're meant to kind of show the dips if they weren't obvious. I think it's tied to some cycles of innovation that have occurred under the developer experience layer. Because we have reinvented infrastructure, right? Kubernetes has reinvented infrastructure. And that's a really important thing that we've provided to, as a large open source community, that's been provided to the IT operations teams, right? It's a new way to think about infrastructure in a much more consistent, much more flexible way. Super powerful. But there's a hunger that we keep coming back to, which is, how do we make the developer more effective, right? Before February of 2016, we were talking about infrastructure as a service being, developers are going to be productive now, right? I mean, yeah, you just got a virtual machine faster. Sure, that knocked off some of the time, right? The same thing applies with containers. Now we're getting containers much faster. But can you go from code to running software, production software, faster? That's really what we need to focus on. Anybody familiar? Well, I'm not going to ask the question. I guess I'll tell you what this is. This is a picture that I actually really like. It's a shot looking straight up in Barcelona of the main part of La Sagrada Familia, right? It's almost done. It's only been, 150 years worth of construction. This is considered Gaudi's, really, I guess, his ultimate triumph. It's going to be done many years after. But the words I have on the screen are the cathedral and the bazaar, and if you've been involved in open source for any amount of time, you might recognize that as it was a missive written by someone named Eric Raymond years ago. I use them because he evoked an interesting contrast between the cathedral and the bazaar, but I don't follow and agree with some of his beliefs there. So instead, I have a different way to think about that duality. The cathedral and the bazaar represent two sides of a creative cycle. The bazaar is evocative of inspiration, of ideas, of innovation, of failures, of the smell of a good spice, right? A lot of interesting ideas being created there, lots of chaos. The cathedral, though, represents some structure, right? It's something that's going to be there, it's going to stand the test of time, but they support each other. The open source world is made up of lots of creative ideas, lots of new thoughts, lots of new approaches, lots of experiments. And a community like the Cloud Foundry community needs to remember to constantly take advantage of that creativity and to be part of it. At the same time, remembering that we can bring it together with structure that's going to work for those that we serve. So that's the first of three big thoughts here. The second, I talk about building bridges quite a bit. This is the Golden Gate Bridge. It bridged the city of San Francisco to Marin County, which isn't that far away, but for many years was completely disconnected. We as an open source community need to continue the work that we've been doing in building bridges between ourselves and others, and supporting when bridges are built between two other communities and finding ways to make that valuable, right? Find the value in the collaboration. That's something that we've done very well. We've gotten a lot better at it. We need to continue to do very well. It's in the service of your customers. If you work for a vendor, it's in the service of the end users of the platform, of those enterprise developers, right? Because it's how we bring new capabilities to them. So in that spirit, I'm going to take a quick aside and say that an opportunity for that building bridges is going to come up in November. KubeCon and Cloud Native Con North America is going to happen November 8th, November 19th, et cetera. But the day before, we will be co-hosting with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation a serverless practitioner summit. While you don't necessarily think of Cloud Foundry as serverless, it represents exploration of developer experience. And that's what we're all about. So if you can make it, please come join us there. So the last of the 3 points that I wanted to make to this community was to talk about change, right? Change inside of our projects. When we talk to, I mean, if you've gone out and you've worked with an enterprise developer to teach them how to be most effective at doing their job, we tell them, look, a line of code could be valuable, but a line of code is actually a bit of a liability, right? Because it represents potential technical debt in the future. We need to hold that same truth ourselves. We need to be able to progress. We need to be able to move, replace components. It's something we do, but it's something we need to be thoughtful and purposeful about in each one of the projects that we build. And we do that because, well, a lot of end users care about this community's evolution over time, right? A huge part of the global market, global economy relies on us. So those are the 3 thoughts, right? Think about that duality of creativity and structure, cathedral and the bazaar. Keep building the bridges between ecosystems and communities, and we need to bake change into our project's DNA, be comfortable with that change. But here's the request. How many of you have been a developer in an organization where you've had to deal with your production environment through a ticketing system? Anybody? Raise your hands. Yeah. All right. Anybody enjoy that? Yeah. Simon's going to be on stage in a minute, and he's going to first explain himself because he just raised his hand. He really likes ticketing systems. But seriously, think about this for a minute. The reason why Cloud Foundry exists and is productive is that it takes away the pain and the drudgery of being an enterprise developer, right? It lets you actually focus on interesting, creative problems. So if you've experienced the before and you've experienced the after, here's my request. Go find somebody who hasn't experienced the after, right? Just let them know there's a better way. Because I know for sure, when I was in the middle of doing a change, on the phone, waiting for a firewall technician to get around to figuring out what rule he was going to make a change for me, how he was going to make this change, at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, wishing that I was sleeping, I definitely would have preferred a model that was much more effective for us. So those are my thoughts. I appreciate your time, so thank you very much.